Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Contemporary Islamic Issues and Concepts on Huda TV. I'm your host, Arqam Rashid. In this episode, we will continue our discussion on the concept of da'wah in Islam. Last episode, we spoke about the forms of da'wah and the different types of da'wah and how a person should give da'wah. In this episode, we will continue speaking about how the da'i himself, the person giving da'wah, should be. So let's start off by welcoming and introducing our wonderful guest, Shaykh Asim Al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shaykh Asim, in the last episode we dealt with da'wah itself, the different types, the forms, the negative types of da'wah a person can end up giving by not behaving in a good way, not acting his religious not acting upon his religious good deeds and bad deeds in a certain way. Now let's get into the person himself, the da'i. What should his characteristics be like?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihudahu, amma ba'd. As you've stated, there is da'wah, what you call people to, whether it's good or bad. And there are two other pillars. One is the person calling others, who is known as the da'i, and the person who is being called, who is known as al-mad'u. So it is essential for your da'wah to succeed that you know all these three types quite well. So let's begin with the characteristics of a da'i. Is it possible that anyone can make da'wah? Definitely yes. But in order to achieve the best results, you have to achieve these characteristics as much as possible. And the first characteristic is the pillar or the condition of all good deeds in Islam. We have two important conditions that must be fulfilled in any form of worship, and that is sincerity and following the Prophet ﷺ's way. So sincerity is the essence of Islam. Allah Azza wa Jal says, and they were commanded not but that they should worship Allah and worship none but Him alone. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ. This is the essence of Islam. Whenever someone has the intention to worship Allah but mixes up with this intention something for worldly matters or to impress people, Allah Azza wa Jal would not accept this. So the da'i has to be solely sincere in whatever he calls people to, that it is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And there are many manifestations of this. Yani if I go to people and I call them to Islam, and one of them insults me, and I get outraged and I fight with him and I maybe quarrel with him, this means that my da'wah is not for the sake of Allah. Because now I'm angered not for the sake of Allah, but I'm angered for my own personal gain. And let us not mix up this sincerity aspect with charging money for it. See, this is a big issue of dispute among scholars. Can a da'i, can an imam, can a scholar charge for his da'wah money or not? Because it seems that if I make a lecture and I take money for that, that this goes against my sincerity. Scholars say that if you are well off, if you have money, if you have a job, if you don't need, then it is not permissible for you to charge. Unlike the worldly standards, when they say, no, you can't charge money because you have a 9-to-5 job and this hour of yours cost XYZ. So you have to charge people. No, this is wrong. You can charge money if you are in need or if you are dependent on such things. And this is based on the Sunnah.
So for example, not to cut you off there, just for example, a person, he has a regular job and he has enough money that he needs, that will cover his needs for the month or monthly, however he gets his paycheck. This person is not supposed to charge for da'wah. However, if, for example, he gives all of his time, every single month, 9 to 5, instead of working a job for dawah. In this case, he can charge for
Correct,
dawah.
and he has to make a living.
Of course.
But now if you build up money, I know brothers who work in dawah, unfortunately, and they have money, they have wealth. If not wealth, at least they're well off. They don't need to beg people or to, and whenever someone asks him for a lecture, they said, okay, we charge £500. Or we charge like $1,000 per lecture. And this is not right, ya akhi. Now, if a person is totally devoted for da'wah, and he has no income, or he could work in a company or in government sector and get a good payment for what he does, but this would compromise his da'wah. So in this case, it is permissible. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, may Allah be pleased with him, in a long hadith where one of the companions gave ruqyah to a tribesman who was a kafir but was stung by a scorpion or a snake, and he was dying. So they told them, can you give ruqyah to him? And the Sahabi said, yes, I can, but we asked you for food when we were starving and you didn't give us anything. So they agreed to give them as a reward something like 30 or sheep, heads of sheep. So the man gave him ruqyah, the companion gave ruqyah to this mushrik, and the man stood as nothing was wrong with him. So they took the sheep to the Prophet ﷺ, did not touch it because they were afraid, is it halal or haram? We did something, we improvised. So the Prophet told them, alayhi salatu wasalam, the best that you charge money over is the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, which indicates that this is a halal reward, a halal wage. Likewise, someone who teaches the Quran and he goes from house to house or teaches in the masjid and does not have a job, it is permissible for him to charge in a normal sense what sustains his livelihood.
That's very interesting. So the first one we can say is sincerity, and this is the most important thing in every single aspect of worship, in every single aspect of our lives as Muslims, that we need to be sincere about our actions. Now, this is also the first thing in da'wah. If the beginning isn't good, if your intention isn't sincere, then obviously the end result, the work, it's going to be based off of this weak foundation. And obviously you give us a wonderful explanation of, does charging money compromise sincerity, and what's the misconception there?
Yeah, if I may add.
Of course, of course.
A lot of the time I get people calling me, sending me emails. I meet the youth. Say, Sheikh, we would like to be in da'wah. How can we be like you? And some of them say, Sheikh, I always dreamt of appearing on TV screens. So how can I be like you? So I say, Akhi, don't be like me, because you have a serious issue with ikhlas, with sincerity. If this is your target, to be famous or to be known or to appear on TV screens, then definitely you are not sincere for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Imam al-Shafi'i, and he was one of the greatest imams of all times, he said that I wish that the people of the whole world benefit from my books, from my knowledge, from my heritage, and nothing is attributed to me. Yani subhanAllah, he doesn't want people to know his name. He doesn't want to be recognized, but he wants people to learn from his books. This is the top of sincerity.
SubhanAllah. So moving on from sincerity, what would you say are, obviously there's many characteristics a da'i should have, but what would you say are some vital characteristics that one should have to be a da'i?
Why do you give da'wah? First of all, to gain reward from Allah. Second of all, to make a difference, to change people's lives, to get them out of darkness into the light. So in order to achieve this objective of yours, you have to be sincere with Allah, but you have to be also truthful to Allah Azza wa Jal. What is the difference? It's a byproduct. What comes from the heart goes straight to the heart. And we see so many people making da'wah, but to no effect. I have some of the brothers saying, Sheikh, I do this and I do that, I have circle of knowledge, I mix with people, but no one accepts what I say. Akhi, this is one of two. Either you're not truthful with Allah Azza wa Jal, or either Allah did not will it. So don't worry. He says, explain. He said, okay, being truthful with Allah Azza wa Jal means that when you give da'wah, you're not giving it sincerely for the sake of Allah. And that is why you are just trying to do your job 9 to 5. You're talking to someone about Islam and you are clearing his misconceptions, but without the passion, without the conviction. And that is why they feel that you're cold. Sometimes you talk to people and you go out of your way trying to save them, try to enlighten them, and mashallah, Allah opened doors for you. So first of all, try to be sincere with Allah. But if people do not accept your da'wah, this doesn't mean that you are not sincere with Allah, because the Prophet told us that on the Day of Judgment, the Prophet would come with a great amount of followers, and a Prophet would come with few men following him. A Prophet would come with 1 or 2 who believed in him, and a Prophet would come with no believers at all. So do we doubt this Prophet's sincerity? Definitely not. He's truthful with Allah, but Allah did not will it that people would accept his call.
That's a very interesting point that you raised there. I mean, it leads me to my next question, which is, then what are the da'i's responsibilities if he's not controlling how many people listen to his da'wah, if he's not to worry about whether his circle grows, whether people actually, after day and night spending, trying to convince people that Islam is the true religion, but not a single soul has converted to Islam through his energy and through the time and effort that he's put in his da'wah. So I want to know, what are his responsibilities? But Sheikh, before you answer that, we're going to go for a short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Contemporary Islamic Issues and Concepts on Huda TV. Now, Sheikh, before we went for that short break, we were speaking about some of the characteristics of a da'i, and the first one was insincerity, just to recap for the viewers. The second thing that we mentioned was being truthful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you gave us an explanation of that, meaning he is not to worry about how many people are accepting his Islam. So that's what that leads me to my next question, which is, what are his responsibilities then? If he's not to worry about how many people convert or not, he's putting in this time and effort and nobody's converting, so what's his responsibilities as a da'i?
You may say that the responsibility is portrayed in Allah's ayah addressing his messenger when he said, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. So Allah says that it is not to you to guide them, but it is Allah who guides whoever He wills. So one says, okay, then in this case, I will just sit back and watch Allah give them hidayah and guidance. No, Allah says, أُدْعُوا إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ. Go and call others to the way of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Islam focuses greatly on quality rather than quantity. So it's not how much or how many you called, how much you have done. It is what exactly have you executed. I did what Allah told me to do, to give da'wah. Whether it would open the people's hearts or not, this is not my responsibility. It's way above my pay grade. This is with Allah Azza wa Jal. So I don't have to guide people to Islam. I simply have to carry out what Allah told me to do.
Okay, so basically it's the da'i's responsibility to inform and enlighten people about Islam rather than to convert people. And you give that wonderful example that even the Prophet, his responsibility is not to convert people, rather to inform people. So moving a little back to the responsibilities of a da'i, to the characteristics of a da'i. We've mentioned sincerity, being truthful with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else can you tell us from the vital characteristics of a da'i?
It is extremely important for a da'i to be knowledgeable. Now when I say knowledgeable, this usually acts as a an obstacle, and it hinders people from giving da'wah. Why? He says, Akhi, one of the characteristics is to be a knowledgeable, and this means I have to go to university, get my PhD, and finish like 20, 30 books, reading them to scholars, and this would take like ages. I can't do that. So, Akhi, no. Be knowledgeable in what you call people to. So for example, I do not know the rulings of zakat. I do not know the rulings of hajj. I zero knowledge in inheritance distribution. I'm zero knowledge in whatever is required for divorce, iddah, marriages. But I know that consuming intoxicants is haram. So if I speak to a friend or a brother who is drinking alcohol, wine or whatever, I wouldn't refrain from advising him because I don't have knowledge in all of these aspects, because I do have knowledge in this, and this is the ayah, and this is the hadith, end of story. I did my part. So you have to be knowledgeable in what you call people to. And unfortunately, we have seen a lot of the ignorance destroying, dismantling what others took years to build. So we come, we work on this community or this society or this individual, calling him to Allah, being kind to him, taking him to the masjid, inviting him for some soup and sambusa and all of this, just to soften his heart. And he's inclined to Islam. He loves Islam. He believes in the religion. All of a sudden, it takes only one simple bad apple to make the whole box of apples rotten. One ignorant person comes and he abuses him, says bad things about him, so that the man does not want Islam anymore. The same thing happens when you give da'wah without knowledge. You have to know the consequences, the pros and the cons, the disadvantages and the advantages of your actions, and which one weighs more than the other. Once, for example, a brother, a teenage, came into the masjid wearing low-waist pants and having the bling-blings in his neck, and he had a ponytail. And the minute he walked into the masjid, everybody in the masjid was, looking at him in a very fiery way. And the boy, the poor thing, he could feel the heat. Everybody's detesting what he's doing or how he looks. The prayer finished, and the boy was ready to leave the masjid with a promise not to come back again. But the Imam was wise. He gave a 5 to 10 minute talk about Allah's mercy, Allah's forgiveness, and about arrogance, and how not to judge others by how they look, but rather by their intentions. And the boy sat and heard that 5-10 minute reminder. The people of the masjid immediately turned 180 degrees and realized their mistake after though he did not mention names. He did not point, but they understood the message after the salah or the reminder. Like 7 or 10 of them went and greeted the young boy and said, "Come on, let's see you tomorrow. We don't want to miss you. You're our guest. This is a chance we will never let go. Khalas, come," like this. They gave him so much sweet talk, invited him. The man and the young boy became a regular, and it took him like 3-4 months, and he was completely transformed into a practicing Muslim.
So this is sort of a wisdom as well, alongside knowledge. So not only knowing what you're calling to, but doing it in a wise way.
Of course, yes. This is the wisdom, or basira, which is mentioned in the ayah, is a compilation of all of this knowledge of what you're calling people to, knowledge on how to do it, and there are other characteristics depending or relating on your kindness, on the way you treat the one you're calling to, that are essential as well.
Okay, so far we have three, just to recap. We have sincerity, the intention and the foundations have to be sincere in order for the end product to be sincere and to be truthful, which leads straight to the second point, meaning being truthful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not so you have a number count. Well, I've converted 51 people, how many have you done? You know, this guy's like, I've done 52. Oh man, I need to catch up to him. So it has to be for being truthful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being solely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether you have no followers, no people that you converted, and you constantly put in the effort every day. Then we went through knowledge, which is knowing what you're calling to, and you clarified this as in, he doesn't need to know every single aspect of Islam. He doesn't need to know usul al-fiqh, tafsir, he doesn't need to know every single subject, you can say, in Islam. Rather, he needs to know what he's calling to. So if he's telling people about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he needs to know about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he's calling people towards prayer, then he needs to know about prayer. What's another vital point you can tell us?
One of the most important characteristics of a da'i is to follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ in everything that he does, because as stated earlier with sincerity, this is the second condition for your deeds to be accepted. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. If you believe in the Day of Judgment and meeting Allah, then you have to have these two conditions. First, that you have to do righteous deeds, and the deeds are not righteous unless they are in compliance to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Secondly, that you have to have sincerity and there's no shirk in it. Now, to follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ means that you have to walk the talk, because your da'wah will not be accepted if you tell people not to smoke and you smoke. If you tell people to pray and you don't pray. If you preach people for a whole year to be kind to their wives and to be kind to the children, and you have domestic violence and you abuse your children, you're not a da'i. You are harming more than benefiting the others. So you have to walk the talk, as they say, otherwise people would not accept your call. And this is why Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, threatened his family. And Umar is the second caliph. He said to them, listen, people look at you, because you are from my family, as hawks and eagles look at the prey on the ground, ready just to fly down and snatch them. I would not tell people not to do something, then only find you, my family, doing it. By Allah, I will double the punishment on you. Now, why is he saying this? Is he changing the law of Allah? No. He's reprimanding his family as wali al-amr. And because they would be a cause of fitna to others, and others would be deceived by them and say, okay, if Umar's family is doing it, then it's okay for us to do it. And by the way, this was the whole behavior of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him, who is the one who narrated in Bukhari and Muslim the hadith that deals with prohibiting plucking of the eyebrows, tattooing, connecting the hair with false hair. So one of the women said, after arguing with him, maybe your family does this. See, she wanted to embarrass him. He's not walking the talk. He said to her, enter my house and take a good look. So the woman enters his house, meets his wife, his daughters, and she comes back. So Abdullah says, what did you see? She said, by Allah, I saw nothing except following the Sunnah, and I have not seen anything wrong. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said this beautiful statement afterwards. Wallahi, if you had seen something else, meaning something against the Sunnah or something against what I preach, they wouldn't be my wife, they wouldn't be my children. I would disown them. So this shows you that you have to walk the talk.
Okay, Shaykh, we're going to conclude this episode inshallah and leave the viewers with 4 wonderful points or characteristics of a da'i: sincerity, being truthful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowledge of what you preach, and following the sunnah. And from following the sunnah, I just wanted to extract something that when you were making your point came to my mind, which was to start with the people that are closest to you. You gave us 2 wonderful stories, and in both stories we see that these 2 great individuals, radiallahu anhum, they started with their family. So obviously with themselves first, then their family. So this puts us back to, you need to, whatever you preach, you need to act upon it yourself, because you start with yourself. So dear viewers, we will leave you with that inshallah, those wonderful characteristics of a da'i. Let's try to act upon these characteristics and give da'wah as much as possible and as much as we can. And until next time, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi